Hello, folks, and welcome back to another wonderful Wednesday webinar where we talk about all sorts of solutions and great projects and things that groups are working on around the Climate Emergency Centre network of now 28 centres and rising, autonomous centres around the country helping and cooperating with each other. Tonight we've got a really interesting one, just post-election. Yaz has come to talk to us from Time to Assemble. That's timetoassemble.org. Check it out. They've got some brilliant work and ideas and projects working on creating more community assemblies. And they're also working on something I really want to hear more about, which is a House of the People, which is like citizens assembly. But Yaz will tell us more, where people come and replace the House of Lords with a House of the People, which is fantastic. We need something like that, don't we? We need a system change. And this is what it's all about, actually seeing system change, ways we can do it. So without too much further ado, over to Yaz. Thanks so much for coming, Yaz. Tell us a little bit more about Time to Assemble. Over.
Yeah, sure. Love to tell you about Assemble. I mean, it was really interesting hearing people check in just now, and like clearly there's actually quite a lot of experience of doing assemblies even in the room, which is really cool. Like there's people who are involved in some of the campaigns that we were in, which I'll get into in a minute. So like Assemble has been set up to bring about fundamental change in the way that decisions are made in this country. And like you say, we want to see a House of the People, which would be a new home for a collective voice of the public, a permanent citizens assembly, which would listen to the evidence and result in charting a course for all of us on all of the biggest issues of our time. And many of us in Assemble have come originally from the climate campaigns. We sit under the same umbrella that houses Just Stop Oil. I myself was involved in the team of Extinction Rebellion UK for some time. Before then, I was a physicist, and I came alive to the crisis through my studies and learning about the non-equilibrium nature of our Earth system and how vulnerable we are to tipping points, and about how rapid and unprecedented the changes that we're seeing are now. And yeah, I think that in the climate space there has been for some time calls for a different kind of way of doing democracy. With the third demand for Extinction Rebellion, the Citizens Assembly, we've seen even a Citizens Assembly, and many of them actually happening in the UK over the last few years. And I guess it's really obvious why, right? Because we need there to be a mechanism of making scientifically informed decisions, which doesn't even happen in our current political system. Also obtaining the consent for a transformation, which I think is something that like lots of people on the left, many of us actually from all different spectrums want to see a massive transformation in our country, but the challenge is how do you build the consent for it? And I think from this election, it doesn't seem like we've got a lot of a lot of possibility or imagination or room to try and bring about any meaningful change. Like we just had this election, like who actually feels heard from it? How much choice did we actually have in the last 6 weeks? I think the truth is our democracy has completely failed us in this election, and we shouldn't just sit back and accept it. Like fewer people voting for Labour and previous governments, yet them winning landslide seats. Millions of people who vote for Greens, like 2 million people. Labour gets 5 times as many votes, but 100 times the number of seats as the Greens. Like, is that fair? Like, and even and we can't celebrate small wins, right? Having 3 more Green MPs in Parliament, is that going to bring about the changes in society that are required to prevent the mass collapse of our key life support system? I know that the people in this room are alive to the fact that of the scale of transformation that's required, and no, we can't wait, to be locked out of Parliament for another 5 years, or just like weekly hoping for proportional representation for another election in the future. We need to see some sort of movement build in the next few years that can challenge the powers that be. And I think what I will say is probably what we know deep down is that everything needs to change. And the proposition is that we can do this in a way that so ordinary people have a say, not just politicians, not just deep pockets. So this system, it can't last on its own, and the crises in society, the natural world, will tear at the seams of our systems. People already don't just trust our political parties. 1 in 10 say that they do, or politicians, to say the truth, same percentage. And this will only get worse as things challenge down the line. And what is waiting for us as a nation, I would put to you, is what we kind of already saw in the last few weeks, which is a rise of fascism. Like when societies get stressed, they're vulnerable to some strong man coming along, pointing at the minorities, blaming the immigrants. We're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it in the US, and we just saw it with reform. You bet that when the election does come around again, that's where people will go, because they're disenfranchised, they're disillusioned, they don't believe that they're heard, they don't see any meaningful change. And so the only choice that they feel that they have is to go for these counter protest candidates. But there is another antidote to the situation, to the poison that's in our society, and that is an alternative that can, model a different democracy where people come together through assemblies that are informed, they support each other, they refuse to be divided, and we build an alternative source of power, like an alternative chamber of government, which can offer us a vision for a different kinds of future to challenge the future that we're just being given by our political system. So this would be a permanent citizens' assembly, like I said, at the heart of government. You could replace the House of Lords. Paris, Austin, Belgium, and Belgium, they both have permanent citizens' assemblies, councils already. The Sortition Foundation, which is a UK-based organisation that is behind a huge number of the citizens' assemblies that have taken place across Europe, is built this model of how a chamber would work when you put in ordinary people. The idea is you randomly select people from the UK, like a lottery, like a jury system, so you get an accurate snapshot of the country. They wouldn't be standard class people, they'd be just absolutely ordinary, like nurses, teachers, engineers. It'd be a space to take the time to listen to the experts, to listen from testimonies from people who are directly affected, in order for them to make up their collective minds and to build an actual future, vision for our future. And so, people like all over the country, I think, have already shown that they're interested in this kinds of political project. We've just come through this election. We had a 6-month plan that ended up having to be implemented in 6 weeks, but there were so many different groups of disenfranchised, locked out members of the public who wanted to get involved and be a part of this. So Muslim-led communities like in Birmingham, like in Bristol, who organised on the basis of protesting against the abomination that's happening in Gaza and a desire for a different way. They held assemblies. Same for Leicester, we had the shock win in Leicester South. There was also a bunch of progressive groups that feel, again, unheard by our Labour leader and have organised, like Andrew Feinstein, across a whole cross-section of issues. In the Collective, you may have heard of the Collective, which again was this rising movement of independence. And there were 60,000 people that voted for these kinds of candidates, and we're in a position now where these assemblies are going to continue. We have we want to see this House of the People start to be built. So we're going to go ahead and bring people together from using sortition, like I described, for an initial session in the autumn of this year. There's an event happening very soon. It was due for the 17th of July, but we've just had to push this back to the 4th of August, where we will take in all of the different assembly inputs that have come from the campaigns that have taken place up to this point, that have been about different results. And we're going to do a big assembly with 100, 150 people to try and set the priorities for this new House of the People when it does finally meet. What are the key things that it will be looking at? What sorts of proposals do we want to be studying in more detail? And for the future local assemblies that will be happening across the country, then we can help frame those discussions as well to be directly for the House of the People. So we want assemblies on a local level to continue. So normal people coming together, a get together, you have some food, there's a few people that stand up to speak, maybe you have some music, then you split up into small groups and you come up with, everyone goes around and discusses what they like about their country and their place and what they want to see changed and what issues are most important to them and what policies they want to see brought about. This all gets aggregated and becomes the manifesto of those assemblies, and it can be carried on. So for national issues, we can go deeper into particular topics that can then feed into the House of the People. But if there's a local issue that feels that community is really rallied against, then there's a pathway to action to challenge their council. So, I'm really interested. I can't remember who it was who talked just earlier about their experience with working with the Lib Dem and other councillors who listened to the outcome of an assembly, and now they're in this confrontational stage where the community has united around its priorities and is now challenging. It was you, Dina, wasn't it? that yes, they're united around your, your priorities, and now you're putting it into the powers that be, and maybe they'll say yes, maybe they say no, but you can kind of continue adding on the pressure and escalate if that's what you need to do. So in the same way, we want to help foster that in other parts of the country as well, because there was a whole array of different campaigns that were from Exeter to Bristol to Hove to many places in London, to Tunbridge Wells like we have here, Dan, and up in the Midlands in Leicester and Birmingham and Liverpool in the north and Wigan, and so there is a desire, and we had this debrief yesterday that universally found that there is this desire for a real change. People aren't arguing over whether or not we need more democracy or not, and so people are just waiting for something to come about. And so the clear invitation and the ask is to come along to our launch for the House of the People, which will be on the 4th of August. And I'll send a link actually, I think, in the chat right now, if you just give me a sec. And also to sign up. Well, actually, I think if you maybe the one call to action I'd like to give you is to sign up on this Action Network form, where we'll be able to give you the further on links, and yeah, consider running an assembly in the community. Just as a first off, to see you only need a few people to put it together. Try and get enough of a lead time. Knock on a few doors. Speak to people to invite them to come. It's got to be not just the usual suspects. These assemblies are spaces for people who are locked out of politics to be heard without any kind of expectation. Not you're asking anything from them. You're just wanting to give them a space to be heard, and people respond in that way. So yeah, please consider running one of those in a climate emergency centre or in another space that you have access to. And yeah, that's, I guess, how we can overthrow the government. It's all right, Phoenix. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yes, well, what an ending line on that. So if you're happy on there, we can go to some questions, some feedback. Are you good there, Yaz? Do you want to add any more? Or are you?
Yeah, I'll take some questions, and I'm sure if there's other things I can think to say, I'll remember them. But yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm sure there was a few questions came up along the way. So if you want to say something, guys, it does. It can be a question, it can be a feedback, it can be a comment. It doesn't have to be directly, a question. You can just say what you're feeling and thinking there. Just a meeting Hannah from Islington again. Just in and out a bit. What do we do? So there's a reactions tab down the bottom here, at the bottom of your screen. Reaction tabs. You can raise or lower a hand, and then we can say who's 1, 2, 3, 4 on wants to ask questions. You can try and do it physically if you're camera's on, but it helps if you use the reactions thing down the bottom. So yeah, if you can find that one and stick your hand up, we'll see. Helen got rid of our Tory MP. Over to Leeds University Challenge. Helen, go for it.
So what I'm thinking is there's a lot of us who've got MPs that have never been MPs before.
Okay.
And it would be really good if we had a concise way of putting this idea across to our new MPs while they are still full of the flush of wonder at being an MP before they've got too ground into going by the whip.
Brilliant. Over to you, Yaz. How do we get the ammunition to get these new MPs on board with the House of People?
I think that's a really good question. I think that's something you could probably immediately do. I think it just comes back to doing an assembly, because if you can invite an MP to some local event that is listening and inclusive, and they might still feel inspired of their, official job, which is supposed to be to represent the community and not be in London. I think if you were to arrange something that they could go to, that would go a long way. I mean, the assemblies will flourish when people come together and they have some sort of, unifying sense of purpose, but also when there's a confrontation, when there's someone to bring the outcomes of that assembly to. Now, we want the House of People to be held, and we want it to kind of continue, but it can happen in parallel to confronting ministers in Parliament or the council. Now, in terms of lobbying a member of Parliament to adopt a House of Citizens, I think that could be really good. There's a petition that we probably can share, maybe Phoenix, but I don't know whether we should be. I think it will take a long time to get to the point where people can seep in this idea of assemblies, and they need to practice them and live them and experience them in order to see their value in many cases, especially those that are the most skeptical. So I would just go back and return to the idea of, you know, finding a couple of your mates, trying to do a venue and you know, printing a flyer and inviting people to host an actual assembly and see what comes of it, because like it does do some pretty wonderful things. And I should also say really clearly, like, you know, Assemble, as far as what we do, is we're an agency that enables groups to self-organize. So we can offer training, we can offer resources like flyers, some guidance, we can connect you up with other local assembly campaigns, and we can help you, you know, bring stuff about while still it being your community-led project, basically, that will take its own independent form, depending on what the priorities of the people place are.
Okay, I think Anna's got a couple of questions, and she did ask one in the chat earlier in the week. Anna, lovely to see you. And then
Hiya, a big
Dinah.
apologies for being so late and for having missed quite a lot of your presentation. So you might have covered all of this, Yaz, and I'm asking questions you've already gone over. But something I'm very interested in. So who is Assemble? What other groups are you working with? Have you mapped out all the places where citizens' assemblies are already happening? So, for example, in Islington, we have a 43 citizen panel that makes climate policy on our council. They have a 12 citizen one in Hackney, and they're about to do one in Camden. We also did a People's Assembly 3 weeks ago on heat and shade, and we are planning our next one is going to be end of September on floods. So I'm just interested, are you working with humanity? How does your offer fit in the map?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good, very good. I was chatting to Claire from XR about some of the Assemblies ecosystem. So Yaz, over to you. That's a very good one.
Yeah, I mean, these popular assemblies you're doing on topics, I mean, I think I'd love us to catch up about those and the reports that have come out on the outcomes, because that would be a great example of something that, you know, a House of the People session could look at and engage with. Topic-based assemblies. That's really interesting. As far as who we're connected to, well, I mean, I think a lot the mobilizers of humanity project, those who ran the assemblies are part of our team, as well as the founders of it, obviously with Roger Hallam. We've come from the same umbrella as Just Stop Oil, but we're operationally completely independent. But we feel that we're working in the same direction because, you know, we both support massive transformation in our political system, for the sake of the climate. We have also been working with a group called The Collective. If you go to wearecollective.org, you'll find more information about them. But this has been the coalition of progressive independents that have organised in this election that, yeah, won 1/10 of the vote or so. Does that answer some of your questions, Anna? Maybe not, I've got all of them.
Not a little bit, but not really very much at all. Are you working with Trust the People? Are you working with Involve? Are you working with the Sortition Foundation? Are you supporting their campaign to get rid of the House of Lords and have a House of Citizens? Or are you just working in a vacuum?
Yeah, we're doing that with the Sortition Foundation, exactly. So we're meeting them and working together, not so much with Trust the People or Involve.
Okay, do you need an introduction to Trust the People, or have you got enough trained facilitators?
We have a system of facilitation and trainings, yeah. So, and I think we're all part of an ecosystem, so there's lots of connections that run over. Less so with Trust the People than with Extinction Rebellion and Humanity Project, but yeah, I guess it's a case by case sort of thing.
That's very good.
Okay.
There's more to be said there and worked through there, and bridges and links and things to be made. I think Dinah, Anna, do you want to? Are you okay there? Do you want a little bit more? And then
Yep.
Dinah's got a hand up.
That's great. Thank you, Yaz. Let's follow up. I'll send you some links to Trust the People.
Can anybody who just mentioned websites, particularly Anna, on those 3 really good Citizen Assemblies, Islington, Camden, the other one, can you pop them in the chat so we're all aware? Any news items, web links? And Yaz, any of those that you just mentioned Involve, the other one? We know about Trust the People and things, but I did have a chat all about this. I'll come back to it when I've got a slot there to say. Dinah.
Couple of things. Because this is so important, I was just wondering if it's worth having like a subgroup on the CEC group about this, because this is the thing, isn't it? We really got to have these people's assemblies. I was really interested, Anna, to hear what you said, that there are sitting citizens' assemblies in Islington, Hackney and Camden. So I didn't know that, because I've become a town councillor just so that I'm kind of on the inside as well as the outside to kind of see what can be done. And like knowing that there's already a precedent, you know, that's already happening, we can ask them, how do you do it? What have you done? We can bring that to our town council and say, how about it? How about it? If we get it going in the town council at grassroots, because at the Climate Hub, we do it, people's assemblies, not citizens' assemblies, but they're really supported by councillors. If we get a citizens' assembly and we show it to the district, then they can start kind of understanding it a bit. Next year, we've got county council elections where we can get rid of a load of Tory bastards. And then hopefully things will really begin to move. We hope, we pray, we don't know, but you know, it's like our best chance. So to know that this is already happening is amazing. I didn't know that. So I'd really love to, I don't want to just have a chat on this like once every 9 months. I want to kind of be engaged. I did the Trust the People training a couple of years ago while it was in lockdown, but I don't know about the Sordisham Foundation or the Humanity Project. So I'd love to be linked in with all these things and talk to other people who are. Thank you. Brilliant.
That's really good, Dinah. Just to say, we will set up some kind of WhatsApp chat for a climate emergency centre assemblies, you know, internet working group, whatever you want to call it. That's really good feedback. Dan.
Oh, sorry, Felix, could I just interject on a point of order?
Yep.
I really sorry. What you said is great and lovely, and we probably all think the same thing. But I find it really unhelpful to say like dirty Tories or whatever you said. I've forgotten, because what if you said like filthy Muslims or filthy cats or some other damn thing like that? You can't be exclusive of any group, because we need to talk to everybody to achieve system change. And I just think it's not really helpful. Thank you. That's not personal.
Thank you for that feedback, Alice. It's good to remember that we are trying to build bridges across all sections of society. And I know as a warrior of the rainbow, we try and reach out to everybody from every class, creed, culture and walk of life.
Because it's what we've never done before, which is why we've still got the same system. So to achieve system change, we've got to do it.
We need everyone cooperating together on the environment of the future. Thank you for that feedback. That's valuable.
Point taken. Thank you.
I had a little chuckle there. Dan, coming up to Dan. Yeah, we're trying to get everyone working together. Dan in sunny Tunbridge Wells, over.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi, Yaz. Yeah, so I had one question, but Dina made me think of another thing I was wondering this week. We've had a like a residents association get together ahead before the election was called in our local rural conservative town. And you know, this is like, I think their big issues are like what they want to talk about is policing and building on the green belt. So but regardless of whatever the issue is, do you have any advice on how we could approach them and say, and try and say, you know, like you've got I don't want to sound like we want to just take over the whole thing, but if we could kind of introduce them or move them away from a residents association, or at least try and turn it into like a community assembly thing that we could do here, and then they could be bringing this to their local parish council. I wonder whether this is something we should be doing, and how would you recommend approaching them?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think the thing of, you know, it's just worth a chance, isn't it? Like, basically, I would say meet up with them and see if they'd be interested in doing an assembly as a form of some kind of consultation that brings more people in. And then, but you're not going to be able to convince them without them seeing it first. So that's why I think the most important thing is to try and run one, and give yourself enough lead time to invite people to come. People will turn up if it's got, you know, very clear purpose and they've heard about it. And yeah, and so I think it's definitely worth a shout. And it seems like a good direction to go in Tunbridge Wells next, if that's, you know, where the energy is. Sure.
Hey, very good. I think Helen, and then I've got a little bit of input there on CEC networks and things. Helen.
Yeah, Leeds did a citizens' assembly on climate change back in 2022. It got coverage on the local radio. It was actually came out of the Leeds Climate Commission, but it wasn't binding. So the top recommendation at the end of it was no airport expansion, and it's just been totally ignored. So it's how do you get these things to stick? And the danger is, if you don't get it to stick, will it turn people off participating in future ones?
Yeah, I think that is a key fundamental question that we're facing. And I think in the last few years there have been a citizens' assembly on, well, there's been many on a few different issues. And typically, like what you see with the Climate Assembly UK, where, you know, a citizens' assembly was convened to ask the public how they wanted to get to net zero, and the results were quite revolutionary. They actually wanted a House of Citizens. If you look at the final results they came up with, and they wanted much more citizens' assemblies, a permanent home for citizens' assemblies. They wanted a, you know, very clear direction of travel away from fossil fuels and decarbonisation, all the transport. They looked at everything like you would totally expect with the citizens' assembly. They made these really like reasonable decisions, and the results have been basically completely unanimously ignored by both parties. And that's a fundamental. That's because I think there has been a fundamentally wrong analysis of power that has that has backed some of the support for the citizens' assemblies. If they're made ad hoc and they just have a limited scope of what they can discuss, and the powers that be are the ones that create them and then decide whether to listen to them or not, they actually can't leverage change. You need to think about where power resides. So the idea of running assemblies externally to government and building a social movement that engages with this new kind of story in the context of massive social issues that feel like they need transformation and aren't getting political change, then you can build a social movement that surrounds what would be a citizens' assembly that wouldn't just be focused on one or two issues, but would be much broader than that. And that is then how you end up building the pressure that's needed to challenge government. It's more like the typical revolutionary model that led Extinction Rebellion's formation in 2019 than it is a reformist model of like of extra inclusivity or you know or pressuring the powers that be using normal methods. The idea that you build, you know, a mass popular movement off the back of a really truly inclusive form of democracy that gives people hope.
That's Helen, does that help? I got some points there.
Yeah, I think so. I think also doing it on climate is actually maybe the wrong way. Just find out what the locals are concerned about, even if it's doing it on, I don't know, immigration, and you totally disagree with them. Maybe you can get them to, you know, to change their mind, sort of thing. But I say that was done all properly. The people were paid £25 a night to come. That was done with Sortition Foundation. It was over about 6 weekends. You know, they really did it properly, and it still just got ignored.
Okay, that's very interesting. I've got a few points to throw in there, and I think Art Group is next. Little bit of history and things. What's to say? This is, you know, this hasn't just come out of nowhere. There's a long history to people's assemblies, community assemblies. You know, the bit that I originally tuned in with is 2009 Copenhagen Climate Summit. We went over, lots of activists from Reclaim Repair and other groups, and British activist groups met with a massive international spread of groups from all over Europe, all over the world. And one of the things we came back from Copenhagen, because the governments didn't do enough, was there was a call put out by activist groups, NGO groups, and indigenous groups saying we need to set up people's assemblies all over the world, kind of take the power back, create alternative power structures and things. So some of us took that on board, particularly UK activists, and we occupied Parliament Square to support Brian Hoare against the illegal wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we actually called it originally the People's Assembly of Parliament Square. Got in the media a lot for the next 4.5 months, but the media dubbed it Democracy Village. They kind of didn't want to talk about People's Assembly or People's Assembly of Parliament Square. Following on from those times, there was Spanish 15M movement. Loads of takethesquare.net appeared, and loads of people started occupying squares. I think the 15M movement said they were inspired by some of the tent occupations of squares in London. You had the Arab Spring around there. You had the Occupy movement. On the very first day, I'm going somewhere with this, on the very first day of the Occupy movement on St Paul's in London one, there was a BBC journalist that I was next to, and he, to camera, he was saying, today over 900 cities are occupied. And when he came off camera, I was a bit blown away. I said, mate, did I just hear that right? 900 cities? He said, yeah, that's what the BBC was saying. So people were experimenting with direct democracy, community assemblies, or people's assemblies called then, or actually the American alternative to general assemblies, because we found out a bit later, after we networked a lot in Democracy Village, was that people's assemblies originally a communist term, and that was used a lot for in communism to have people's assemblies. But I think general assemblies, community assemblies, there is a new wave now. Occupy people were involved with XR, Jamie Kelsey Fry and others, ourselves, lots of different people. And, you know, XR taking it to another level, and the groups going on beyond that, you know, and it's citizens, you know, citizens assemblies and people's assemblies and community assemblies. And this ecosystem we've talked about, and chatting with Claire from XR the other day, there is an ecosystem of groups, you know, from Trust the People to Humanity Project to Assemble to Sortition Foundation to Involved to other different ones that are getting on, and lots of groups starting to do assemblies around the country. I think we need to accelerate this. I'm going to pop something in the chat in a minute of set up a chat group for climate emergency centres, kind of assemblies working group. We put originally into the handbook that the dream and the idea was that all of these different centres could have a people's assembly once every couple of months in the building, and also out in the parks, because it's more inclusive out in the parks. Everyone can come and join in, and we still want to keep building that. And the longer term vision is that we could link up, you know, there's 28 climate emergency centres now, you know, 30, 40, 50 centres doing people's or community assemblies, and link up the information digitally that they're talking about, taking it to the next level. Occupy live streamed a lot of stuff, but we need to accelerate this, because governments are not coming to save us, and we need people to get very, very organised very quickly. So that's a bit of the movement history, and we'd love to see more climate emergency centres working with many of these different groups and setting up people's assemblies. So that's my piece bunged in there. I'll chuck WhatsApp group in if you're interested in continuing to organise. Let's do that. Over to Art Groupie in Bristol, and then Anna in Islington. Over.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, it relates to a point slightly before that, and I've kind of forgotten what I was going to say. I know what I'm going to say. I've got quite a lot of it's in relation to where the power lies. I've got quite and also Tory, because I got quite a lot of papers on working class conservatism and isolation, social abandonment, social disempowerment, and that does apply to working class conservatives. And actually, it comes from a place of insecurity. So also on the same note, there's predicted to be an increase in fascism, because people are turning this way and that way because they don't know what to do. So the worst, absolute worst thing we can do is alienate people that already feel disempowered. And if we want to create some power in what we're doing, we need to actually empower Tories, as silly as it may seem. Thank you very much.
Okay, interesting points. Get them all lively. Right, so a few on the University Challenge panel there. We have Anna in Islington, then Ocelot, then Georgina. Over.
Okay, so just to respond to Alice, I think you're absolutely right. I think we should be holding people's assemblies with reform voters, about what they would like the plan to be on immigration. I think because part of the reason they're voting reform is because nobody listens to them.
Absolutely. And if you see some of the literature I've got here, it's like one is called The Global Cry of Loneliness. I mean, it's really fucking dire. What we need is a community that will solve working class conservatism and division, really.
Yeah.
Because
So,
people are not actually born, just people, really.
Yeah. And I've actually seen at our Heat and Shade Assembly last week, we had a new volunteer who shouted his head off at somebody at the council, right? 5 years of frustration popped out of his mouth, which was a bit unfortunate for the council guy. But halfway through, they were actually talking to each other and they were both much more engaged in it. So it really does work.
Exactly.
But I've got a few things that I think are quite important. I think if we're all rushing around doing people's assemblies and none of these things ever happen, we risk diluting the interest in them and diluting the power of them. So I think we have to be quite structured.
May I interrupt to endorse you thoroughly? Thank you very much.
So I think it's quite useful. So I haven't got the perfect strategy. I'm not saying I have, but something that we tried on the last one is I got everybody to write down for themselves one pledge, and I've stuck it in an envelope and I'm about to post them all to their houses. They wrote their own addresses on them because I think that you've got to feel like something came out of it. You spend all this time discussing and doing all those kind of things. So that's important. To come back to the point, who was it in Leeds said, Helen, said that you'd had one in Leeds and they hadn't given any of it, they haven't done anything with it. That is a great problem. And at Islington, we've got these 43 citizens. Now, we've met them on a community night and they're deliberating at the moment, but I don't know what mandate they've got. And so all I can think of is the way that I can enforce their mandate is to shine as much light on it as possible so that we can say, look, this is what was recommended. Why haven't you done it? And get everybody to write. So that, I mean, that is just as far as I can see. It's the same with what happened with Climate Assembly 2020, which I've put in. You can see all their recommendations. They were absolutely transparent. It was commissioned by 4 select committees. Usually it only takes 1 select committee to lose something, but 4 can really bury it forever. So, but if you read the blog post from Involve, which is a recommendation to the new government must be delighted with the amount of new recommendations they're getting at the moment. But if you read that, that is very clever and very well constructed. And it says that we should be using these things for our health service, for our social care, for all those kind of things. And there is a big history of it, and there are lots of people doing it. And I think people are starting to really understand how it works as a useful thing. The only people that we need to persuade the most, though, are the new government, because they're going to do things like they want to change planning laws, and immediately that's going to make enemies. And what they need to do is say, right, everybody in this area, how are we going to sort out our clean power? But I think with Involve and with us all writing to our MPs, then we can persuade them maybe. Sorry, I ranted on too much. I'll shut up.
Great information, Anna. Thank you. Keep it coming. Put any links in. Over to Ocelot.
I'm glad you ranted on more than me today, Anna. It makes me feel better.
Ocelot, then Georgina. We've got a couple of linking in points.
Thank you. I'm quite interested in this bit, and thank you for those people who've put a bit in the chat in the answer to my question about how you select or how you get the people you're talking to. It seems to me that a citizen assembly has some kind of bit that the people in power would listen to, because it is meant to be representative of the area that you're talking about. Whereas a people's assembly, you are basically talking, I think, to the people who are potentially talking to the people who are already in your camp, what you believe in, and therefore it can be viewed as being a skewed sample, not representative. And I was wondering if people had A, thoughts on that, and B, ideas on this sortition that I think someone like the answer was sortition if you wanted a citizen assembly. How do you go about that at the local level? Thank you.
Right. Do you want to come back on some of that, Yaz, or any of the various points? Then
Yes, okay.
Georgina, I've got some points to link in as well. Over.
Sure, yeah, I think it's a really good question. And you're right, to a certain extent, there will be a skew, I imagine, but you can mitigate to that. And I think anyone who's organising the assembly does need to do a lot of work to reach out to disenfranchised groups and communities that aren't politically engaged, because the whole point of the assembly is like, this is what someone in Hull, Corporation Hull, is doing again, which we're talking to and getting learnings from, is that these things politicize people, and that can take time, but people will come if someone goes at the door and actually speaks to them, rather than just depending on. So there needs to be a lead time, a serious effort of outreach in certain places in order to get people to come to it. That's a key thing I want to get across. But nonetheless, there will probably still be a skew inevitably, which is why the sortition method is so important. So the House of the People that we're going to try and build in November, we want, if there's a couple of hundred people in it, half of them will come from the individual assemblies on a local level that happen. People will have the opportunity to opt in to effectively a raffle to be part of this House of the People session in the autumn. So half of them will come from that. And then from those, there'll be an analysis of the demographics that are involved in that, because as you may guess, I think there would be a skew. And then Sortition Foundation have agreed to look at that data and come with an even larger array, a much more public sort of effort of sortition, invitations to people in much further parts of the country, even in terms of much different values than those that have already been selected. And yeah, that will be the second half. So you'll end up with they'll fill in the gaps effectively. So you end up with a proper accurate snapshot, which I think is an important part to any credibility that you want the assembly to have.
Georgina?
How sorry, can I just come back on that? How do you how do you recommend doing that at a local level? I understand what you're saying for your
I've got an idea.
the national one, but what offers or what things did you recommend for a local level for trying that? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think you could do the same sort of thing that they do, but on a smaller level. So you'd have to send letters of invitation to a bunch of addresses in the constituency, as many different like houses as possible, which are basically saying we're hosting a day where we're going to, this big plan. There's going to be a citizens assembly. It's going to be on this topic. We're hosting a day to select the participants. People come. You get a lot more than the 100 that you need maybe for a citizens assembly. You get, maybe imagine a 2,000, but out of those, they fill in a form. You then go through the analysis, you interview some of them, and then you select the 100 that is according to the demographic lines that you set at the start. So, you can deliberately make sure you have the right proportion of people who suffer from disabilities, or in terms of the wealth distribution in that area, or I'm going into a bit too much detail, but it is quite doable, but it needs to have a proper team and when the intention to do it.
And are the individuals meant to be just representing themselves, or are they meant to be representing a community of some sort?
No, it's just like a jury. They're representing themselves, and collectively they represent the public.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, that helps us a lot. Georgina, and
yeah, I obviously need to get far more information about this, but I just want to put in the mix. I mean, certainly in London, I think it's 2026, our local council elections, when we really need to be kind of holding our councillors to account. And I live in a borough where it's kind of a Labour stronghold, and they'll just feel absolutely empowered by the election, even though, as we all know, they were voted in with fewer people than they were in 2019. But anyway, they'll be even more empowered to completely ignore us. I found out today, I think this is right, that only 30% of people vote in Lambeth. So there's a huge amount of people out there that are just not being listened to or talked to or anything. And so this is just so important. That's it.
that's a real key point. Georgina, thank you for speaking up for the voice of the voiceless. It's a point I often make to people, that these are just the people who do vote or who actually have got a vote, and only 30% voted for this government, but that was of the people who did have a vote, can vote, and did go and vote. So it's even less than 30% actually elected this government, because many people in this country don't have a vote for various reasons. They're more nomadic or whatever it is. Anna, And great links you're putting in the chat, folks. Please put more in if you got them. Anna, and then Helen. I'm hoping Helen will put these notes up on the main chat afterwards. Over, Anna, Helen.
I was just going to sort of reinforce a bit of what Yaz said, which is, you know, to make a proper citizens' assembly, to recruit by sortition, is an expensive thing to do. And so 9,000 letters went out in Islington to get 43 people. On Climate Assembly UK, which I've put the link to the documentary about it in the chat so that you can see, they sent out 30,000 letters to get the right person. So you have to be really efficient. People's assemblies, I think it's probably interesting to work out what you could do between you. So what you won't have is the power to make a government do something. But for example, what we were exploring in Heat and Shade was what we had that where we could just help each other if there was a heat wave. So who had cool spaces, who knew where stuff was. So it's almost like a resilience building thing and making networks of trust before the crisis happens. And I also went to the London Communities Emergency Planning Conference, which was very interesting. And that was all run with kind of people's assemblies. And it's kind of trying to find the space between sort of empowering and coming from the bottom up, as we all are, and then command and control coming from government. And that in the emergencies, it was all about how can these civil groups, you know, like food banks, all these kind of things help and be empowered to do this stuff. So I think it is an idea whose time is coming. You know, everybody's at it everywhere I go. We just have to make sure that we deliver inclusive and quality.
Very good points. And I know as quite a few of the different centres are engaging with the national emergency thing. If you can put the web link into that conference just mentioned as well, that would be fantastic. The London emergency one. I know Kingston and some other groups have been working with emergency planning, and the South Coast ones have been meeting with the fire service and others about emergency planning. Climate emergency centre is going to help in various ways. Helen, then Art, then I've probably got a few points, and we're getting towards the end of our time. Absolutely fascinating conversation, guys. There is a CEC Network Assemblies working group that will continue some of this to try and link up the ecosystem of people's assemblies and accelerate them happening through the different centres and places. Check it out in the chat and send us your email if we don't have it. Helen, and then Art.
Just really a quick answer to was it Ocelot who was asking how you get the people. I went on one of those Trust the People courses, and there was someone there. I think that's where I got involved with you lot. There was someone there, and they had sat outside their local post office for a week, engaging people. Then they moved to a post office at the other side of town for another week. And then they moved to another post office somewhere else. And she got nearly half the town to come to a community meal and then set up her thing. So I'm thinking, like you're saying about sending out all those letters, have the letters, have them printed, and every person that you speak to, ask them to deliver letters down their road. We haven't got money, or not that sort of money. We've got to get clever about how we do it, but being a bit, you know, a bit right. And I did notice Dinah's hand has been waving around. I think she wanted to speak as well.
Okay, well spotted there with networking. So Art Groupie, then
I'll keep
Dinah.
mine very, very short because I was going to actually say pretty much the same point. Because usually in XR, we think, oh, time limit Gantt chart, we've got to produce something within that time. That is not the definition of efficiency. And I'm thinking, based on a couple of things people have said, and getting representative participation, isn't it quicker to, and should we consider translating some, giving it to, say, one person from that community set to go to Wara or wherever you are, depending on what area you're in, for them to give it out to their community and explain it like that. That's much more efficient in my view. And I'm a person that hardly does any work because I literally skip to the most efficient way of doing nothing. So that's it, really.
Okay. Who was next? There's networking Dinah.
Yeah, do want to say that I completely agree with what you said about Tory voters. Yeah, everything has to be inclusive. And thank you for reminding me of that. I was just thinking, like, with getting people to, because where I am, we haven't had a citizens' assembly. And what I'm hoping is that through using people's assemblies, it will become clear to a lot of people the difference between a people's assembly and a citizens' assembly, so that when we propose one, people will understand what it is and they'll be behind it. But I was just thinking, like, how to get people to come. And I do think that even though it hasn't got powers, if you could have one on something that's really critical to people, like housing, like housing or food scarcity, things that are really apparent to most people, that if it's a local topic that, because I think immigration is a really difficult one to go into first go, although it's on a lot of people's minds, but housing and stuff that affects sort of everybody is quite a good way in, because people will come because it's happening to them. And even if it's just a people's assembly or a citizens' assembly kind of mock-up, where you get the people from housing and you get people from a shelter and you get people who are working with homelessness and some homeless people and some stone rich people, and you do it just to kind of act it out, and people see the work. And when the results come up, you get them in the newspaper, you get them everywhere, even if they're not acted on, because then it's out there, then you can go back. I'm really not sure, because we really want citizens' assemblies. We haven't managed to have one yet, but I just wanted to add that bit about crucial things that affect everybody.
Brilliant, really good, Dinah. Really taken on board there, on certain subjects, and some of them are happening on certain levels. Housing, food scarcity, cost of living. It's a great, really good idea. Just going to bung a few points in, but I'd also like anybody who hasn't spoken, I'm happy to run on. If folks, if you've got to go, you've got to go. But another 5, 10, 15 minutes if you want to, and we'll come over to Yaz as well for any summing up, and particularly any action points of how you can get involved, how you can get information packs in your area to accelerate assemblies. Few points I've got there. Just it's in the handbook about how the climate emergency centre is about regular people's community assemblies, whatever you want to call them, general assemblies. There's incredible things that happen at these different assemblies. Sitting at Occupy London and watching a complete mix of, from homeless people to bankers to housewives to students to economists to road sweepers coming in and chucking in their ideas, was a phenomenal thing to be part of. And having run talking circles in community centres for 35 years, it's sometimes the quietest people who haven't spoken who come out with some of the deepest wisdom when you create that space for people who don't speak as much, or people with different, whatever it is, to speak more. And there's incredible ideas. We do have the solutions, and one of the things with climate emergency centres, we want them to be community led. If these assemblies can happen more often and be supported, then you will get the ideas in from your community into your centre and then feed it into your council. One of the really key points someone jotted into there is, as my notes said, does it translate? How is it put into action? Does it actually happen? It's great. You got 150 people, 200 people together in your community hall, came up with all these great things on housing, energy, agriculture, transport, cost of living crisis, whatever it is. But if that's typed up and collated and completely ignored by your council or by government, we feel disempowered yet again. So we need to take the power back. How do we make these things happen? Just some practical ideas. Staines Climate Emergency Centre, number 2 that's set up after the first one we did in Ilford. They got a £9,000 grant from the council to set up 3 community assemblies, and they said they would listen and they would take on board into council policy some of those ideas that came out from people. Now, we've been dealing with councils for 30 years. What they actually say and what they actually do is two different things. But we can get more cooperations like that's great. Another one from Jamie Kelsey Fry has been a massive, you know, since Occupy, pushing, helping, supporting, writing the XR People's Assembly handbook and other things. And now I spoke to him the other day, as well as Claire from XR, about the ecosystem of assemblies groups. He said that a while ago, he's now really focusing on a global assembly that is like global, all around the world, linking up an assembly, and they're working really hard to include less listened to voices, Indigenous voices and groups and all sorts of people to really get them in there and involved. But he said to me a while ago in the chat that Bristol Council said to them, we want people's assemblies. You are knocking on an open door. You think you're fighting against the council sometimes, but actually we want you to do people's assemblies. We want to listen to people's assemblies, and we want to take action on people's assemblies. Again, talks are cheap from councils, actions are better. But how do we gather some of this knowledge? We've set up a WhatsApp group here for, you know, Climate Emergency Centre Network, kind of assemblies work group, to try and weave in people from all of these different groups and set up more. I'd really like to see this accelerated. Trust the People's done brilliant work training a lot of people. And there's, like we've just listed in this call, 6, 7, 8 different groups working on stuff. Claire from XI chatted to you for about half an hour about this. She mentioned about another 3 or 4 groups that are working on all sorts of community and people's assemblies from Cornwall right across to Norfolk and around all around the country. I think the Truro one did a big one, a climate assembly in the cathedral. So there's possibility to use churches and other things. Anyway, that's most of the feedback verbal there from the Phoenix 35-year activist brain. Let's accelerate this, folks. It really is the solution. I think when we occupied Parliament Square, they talked about something called dual power, creating parallel systems to what's going on. We need to empower a House of the People. We need to get on with setting up these people's community assemblies very, very fast. And they will join in with us, councils and governments, because we've had meetings with government departments. They don't know what they're doing. There's no one actually steering this ship, folks. We need us all to get together and cooperate very fast and create these systems. I'm going to come over to Swan, because Art Group has had a couple of goes, and then Alice, and then particularly anyone else who wants to speak, anyone who hasn't spoken, share some last few comments and points, and then we'll come over to Yaz for sum up. But thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Swan, lovely to see you. Thanks for linking us up.
Yes. So my confession is, oh, there's a dog, sorry, is that I'm working with Assemble right now. So that's why I've been quiet and actively listening to you all, because it's really important. You're like, everything that I heard is really, really interesting. And I've been taking notes from Anna's links in the chat and stuff like that. But anyway, I just want to plug again what Yaz said about the House of the People event on the 4th of August in London. So if you go to the Assemble website, you'll find out more information about it. Now, how is it different? Because it's legally binding, because we're going to make it happen ourselves, and basically come along and find out about it if you are in the area, and please share the information about the event with your networks so that other people that want to get involved can. What's been really interesting about the campaign so far over the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, or whatever I've been doing it, is that there's such a diversity of people coming in, such a broad spectrum. I feel like I've been in an echo chamber for a really long time, and I've stepped out of that for a minute, and it's really fascinating because there's a lot of different perspectives out there that I'm hearing that I've never heard before. Mainly because there's been a lot of collaborations with the Palestine Solidarity Network, like going along to the protests, talking to the people, talking to the Muslim community. We did a big roadshow event in Birmingham, again, huge success. Loads of people came there that I've never seen before, didn't know any of them. So there's lots of learnings there about like talking to being able to create space that people come in and feel safe in, and that aren't normally in these spaces, and talking together. So yeah, come along on the 4th of August. Please write it in your diaries. And yeah, that's it. I'll pass back to Phoenix.
Well, I did have a teeny weeny point, and it was to agree with you about relation to spaces. And I remembered something about Bridget's application to do an art factory. It had to include how to make the space inclusive. not just in terms of neurodiversity, which is very important. I can't go to Bristol meetings because I feel like I'm being grilled alive. Anyway, but in terms of colours that you use, wording that you use, what kind of space, you've got to think about this space that you're providing. It's got to be comfort. You know, it's got to have welcoming air for all type of people, not just ones that are used to corporate spaces. And that's just what I wanted to add.
All right, brilliant, folks. Lots of food for thought. It is recorded and goes out on the YouTube channel afterwards. And hopefully Helen will help us again if we do a little summary of the stuff in the chat, and we can put that out on the WhatsApp and the Telegram group. Yaz, I'm going to come over to you really for the final sum up words. We've run a bit over, but absolutely fascinating. Just before we come to Yaz, is there anyone else who hasn't spoken who wants to share just briefly anything? Comment, doesn't have to be a question, could be feedback, can be anything. Okay. Given a bit of time there. Jump in if you want. Just to say, I'd love to hear a little bit more about two things, Yaz, and say your sum up. Two things I'd like to hear about is legally binding ones that actually they have to do whatever the people have decided. And there's mentioned this Belgian one. That sounds like a successful model. Please tell us a little bit more before you do your final sum up and action.
May I just add to that a bit, Phoenix? Is legally binding only mean at council level? For example, if you downturn the airport and then the government bounces back at you in your face, you can't do nothing about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we make these things council actually or government actually take them on board? You mentioned legally binding. And tell us a bit about Belgium, and then tell us how we can actually help Assemble to get more. Is there an action pack you can send to everyone, or it's on the website that they can push to their MP, organise one in their climate emergency centre? Thank you so much, Yaz. Over to you for the final week.
There's so many things I wanted to say. I just want to just quickly say that last thing you said, Alice, about making the space feel like adding art to the space to make it, I think that was actually a really, really important.
Yeah, basically get Bridget to send you her job application, and then you'll have it covered, mate. We've thought of all these things already.
Yeah, okay, right, maybe I will do that. Okay, so in regards to oh man, I've already forgotten what you just said to me, Phoenix. Brussels, maybe I haven't got much to say. I mean, it's relatively new. It's been around for a couple of years, and it's again, it's feeding into legislature. So I guess that's what I wanted to say. Right, you make something legally binding by it writing the laws. So just like the Lords does, you know. So if you replace the Lords and you put them in with people, and they're looking at everything the House of Commons passes, then then it's legally binding, and anything else is just asking the powers that be to please implement it, and it's just basically a consultation process. So Brussels is a bit like that, and maybe I can give you some resources afterwards. I could have a lot to say on top of my head, but I wanted to quickly return to something that also really resonated with me, which is we have a long tradition of assemblies. I mean, as a species, you could argue probably going really far back, but even just as a country, with all these different elements and the fact that direct action and assemblies have gone hand in hand for some time, and at the Palestine marches, just the last one that happened last Saturday, we held an assembly. Like 50 people turned up. The vast majority of those people who are there want to come for the next one and fly for the next one. We want them to be a part of these Palestine assemblies as well, because where there are people who aren't being heard, just like the Chartists, even when you go back, right, groups of people who were completely disenfranchised by their community came together to decide their priorities, put it into a charter, and then eventually champion change and saw that change happen when it just seemed so unlikely beforehand. And so, we want to continue with these assemblies. We're going to be doing these big events. We have this idea to connect with musicians who have political aspects to their art, and then therefore we can make sort of dedicated spaces for particular issues and assemblies and events. So we want to be doing that in London, and we want to be doing that in Bristol as well. Those are two places where they will be happening. So yeah, watch this space. Please get tickets for the House of the People. Actually, I just let me send this again. So I've put a link to the Eventbrite for you to book tickets for the 4th of August. And yeah, let's continue this conversation on the WhatsApp chat. And in terms of if you want to do assemblies, the most important thing is to come to the trainings. The first one is on the 23rd of July, but they're every Tuesday at 7 p.m. So yeah, please consider doing any of those things, and we can help with venue costs and flyers if you need as well with Assemble. So a lot of stuff there, but thanks so much. I've really, really enjoyed today, and thanks for making the space, Felix.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Jazz, for coming and sharing all that knowledge, all that information, all that hard work. And just to say, it's really, really important we accelerate this. You know, it's been a long-term part of the CEC network that we can help be the infrastructure, the physical spaces where assemblies can happen. And it's really important to have in the buildings, but also out in the parks, because anyone can walk in the park. They don't always come into the building. And we need to accelerate recording it properly, digitally, what all these groups are talking about and deciding, and getting them all binding and keep going. Anna, I think, has got a parting thing there.
Yeah,
Eva?
just that link that you've put in, the Eventbrite link, takes me to something for the 17th of July.
Right, so actually it's gone through changes, but I see not those changes have made it to the Eventbrite yet. But sorry, we have our website's changed, but I'm going to be, as soon as we get off this call, I'm going to change this to Eventbrite.
Okay, so it's not that I'm doing it in the wrong way. It isn't just quite there yet.
No, exactly. We just had to change
Okay,
it.
I'll keep an eye out for it.
Sure.
Right. I think it's moved, moved a week or something. But really do, reach out to any of these amazing groups that are doing stuff, from Trust the People to Assemble to all the rest, the Sortition Foundation. All right, folks, really great tonight, really inspiring chat. Thank you, Yaz. Thank you, all the Assemble crew. Thank you, Swan, for linking it up. We shall see you next week in another week and set up a community assembly near you somewhere. I'm going to stop recording, but I want to ask Yaz an interesting thing about an action he did after.
Oh, right, yeah, I forgot to even mention the action.
Stop the recording there. And thank you everyone very much for coming, and pop us your email if you can. Check it out on YouTube, network it. Okay, stop.